Fantastic. So, Anthony, thank you for joining me today.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Looking forward to it.
Excellent. Well, yeah, just for everyone watching, this is another interview. Well, this is a interview that we're having around AI and its use within the built environment. I'm the MD at Cherry Pick People, Alex Wiffen, and we're partnering with Red Foundation, who are a not-for-profit organisation that focus on how data is used within the built environment. So it's obviously a very relevant topic, AI and its use and the importance of data within utilising AI, which I'm sure we'll touch upon at some point. Obviously, Anthony here today is a part of the Red Foundation and a well-known name in the PropTech space and the built environment as a whole. So great to have you and really interested to get your insights. So Anthony, maybe kicking off the first question is regarding AI. Where do you see the sort of opportunities for AI integration within the built environment, from your point of view?
Okay, well, the first thing I think one has to do when talking about AI is to first define what we actually mean by AI.
Yes.
There are two in particular very different flavors of AI which tend to get conjoined and muddled up. So there's analytical predictive AI, which learns from historic data, understands patterns in historic data, and therefore makes predictions about what might happen in the future. Very much an analytical tool, been around for decades, widely in use all over the place, has been available to the real estate industry for many, many years. I gave a talk in 2017 where I pointed out 18 different workflows within the real estate that could be that are bullseyes for AI, and practically none of them have happened, mostly because they're to do with predictive AI, and we'll talk about why that hasn't happened before. And then there's, if you like, the new kid on the block, which isn't that new, but it sort of started based on a paper that came out of Google in 2017 called Attention is All You Need, which introduced what's known as the transformer technology, which is the foundation of generative AI. So you then had OpenAI started working on this, and they were the first people to really scale up the size of algorithms, the amount of data, the amount of compute that would be applied to that data. And that got us to November the 30th, 2022, with the launch of ChatGPT, which incidentally was actually put out by OpenAI as a tester for researchers. They thought actually other researchers would just use it. They had no idea it was going to go bonkers. And of course it went bonkers, and it reached 100 million users in 2 months or something like that. Now that is based on generative AI. Now, generative AI is actually a creative tool. It's not an analytical tool. It's primarily a creative tool. And the way it in essence works is the models get trained on huge amounts of data, from which they devise a statistical model of all the interrelations and interactions within their training data. So it is not a database. Lots of people mistake it, and they go to ChatGPT and they ask it for facts, and then they go, ha, isn't this rubbish? It doesn't know a fact. Well, that's because it's not a database. It's a statistical model. And what happens when you put a query in is you put a query in, it looks up using its statistical model, what is the likely answer to that question to have been based on everything I know, everything I've been trained on, and then it creates an answer. So it is very much a creative tool, which means very different things. Now, if you look at the predictive analytical AI, which, as I say, has been around for a long time and has many uses in real estate, but it largely has not happened because for it to work, you need a huge amount of data, really good, high quality, cleansed data to work on, to do your machine learning on. You know, the hints in the name, it's learning from this data. Now, if there's not much data, it can't learn very much. And that's really the case in real estate. We either don't have that much data, or if we do have data, it tends to be a bit dirty.
Yeah.
In many of the things that really, really matter, there simply is not that much data. So, for instance, if I want data on the price of bonds being traded on the stock market each day, I can probably get hundreds of millions of data points a day.
Mm.
If I want data on 100 million plus euro office transactions, what are there? A few dozen, few hundred? There's just simply not many. So if
Yes,
there's not many, there's not necessarily much you can learn from it. And
not big
also,
enough. Yeah.
yeah, and also real estate suffers from the problem of not being homogenous. Every single building and every single transaction is different.
Mm.
It's like those residential valuation systems. If you're doing it on lots of the streets of London where everything is the same,
Mm.
or if you're what were they called, open door in America, and you were doing valuations in Phoenix, where you got 14,000 homes which are identical. The only difference is going to be the decoration. If you
Mm.
come to somewhere like where I live, every single house is completely different. There is no pattern. So you have a lot of problems with predictive AI. The joy of generative AI is that most of the data one actually needs has actually been consumed by the model in its training. So it
Hmm.
already knows the whole internet. So if you like everything you need to know about everything, pretty much it knows. Not necessarily very domain specific things and above a certain level. But frankly, for your average person, if you want to know about valuation models, if you want to know about um, uh, if you want to know about negotiation, if you want to know about these sorts of things, it's all in the training data, so we can create lots of new things. So there's a huge amount of what we do day to day in our work, which actually is not real estate related,
Of
not
course.
specific. It's just business. So you do
Yeah.
sales and marketing, you do
Mm.
software, you do R&D, you do customer services and operations. That's just business.
Mm.
And so all the things you do, which are, if you like, business operations, generative AI is fantastically useful straight out of the box because it
Mm.
will know a vast amount of them. So anything you do primarily in, as I said, software development, customer operations, R&D, and sales and marketing, anything you do in those areas, you can find utility within generative AI today for $20 a month, and huge utility. And if you look at how much of the work people do in real estate is business work as
Mm.
opposed to real estate specific work, it's a lot because it's a lot in every
Cool.
in every
Any
industry.
industry. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a very very long answer in the sense of yes, there's lots of things we can do with predictive analytical AI and should, but it's hard. But there's a lot of utility immediately out of the box for every single individual within the industry, within the generative AI sphere.
Yeah. So those things that are applicable to across all sectors, really, like having the the, the administrative and repetitive tasks taken up and or taken out to allow you to be extra productive, each individual to be extra productive. Um, and I suppose within the built environment, have you seen any particular bits of AI that have been, you've been really impressed with, or will you see the AI having a big impact over and above maybe, or maybe even some of
Yeah.
the,
Yeah, no,
ones?
there's a number of examples. So let's just pick a few.
Yeah.
On my course, which is generative AI for real estate people, I have a lot
Mm.
of case studies. So they're case studies of companies that are specifically using generative AI, and how they've used them. So I'll give you a couple of examples. There's the London-based company Fifth Dimension, which I think is going to do extremely well. They started from the proposition that real estate is a very document heavy industry and generative AI is a language model. What are documents made up of? Language. So therefore the two go very, very nicely together. So they've been developing lots of tools for helping people manage and understand and work through and generate documents. And these are real estate related documents. So there's people like that doing really interesting things. I also like companies like Layout, which is the Norwegian company, who do automated, essentially fit out
Designer.
fit
Yeah.
out designs and floor plate designs. So you give it a floor plate, you tell it what you want, and it'll give you 50 options. And this is one of the things that's always worth bearing in mind in all of this. These tools often give you options; they don't necessarily give you the answer. And the important point and the value is in the judgment. So, for
Mm.
instance, if Layout comes back and it gives me 20 different designs for my new office, the real value, well, not necessarily the real value, because that's got a lot of value, but the
Mm.
ultimate value is in my choosing that one, because I understand what it is beyond, I understand, if you like, the tacit knowledge about our company. So not the
Yeah.
explicit stuff. Layout can deal with the explicit stuff, factual, quantitative. I need this. I know the qualitative. I know what Alex likes. I know what Antony likes. I know what the
Mm.
sales team like, blah, blah, blah. And therefore I can make a judgment of those. So people like anything to do with design is extremely useful. There's another brilliant Norwegian company called Consigli, who are also
Oh,
based over here now. They
mm.
do, and the way to explain this is when I was speaking to the founder, brilliant woman, and she says, explained to me, well, if you go into an office, if you go into a commercial building and you look up, everything in the ceiling is what we design.
Okay.
So they algorithmically design all the services that are in the ceiling. That's
Mm.
their principal thing. What is also particularly interesting them, so they will optimize all the utilities and the services being put into your building. But what I really love about it, it will then auto generate all the documentation that goes with
Mm.
it. So you immediately get full documentation of what is where and all the other ancillary information around it, which is incredibly useful. And mostly what we don't have. You know, if you talk to, you know what it's like, you talk to real estate people and ask them how much they actually understand what their building is doing. And they go, well, if it breaks, we then run around and try and find the manual, and you know, who do we buy it from and everything. You know, these
Yeah.
things are not documented, so they're really good. And then there's another company which is based in Montreal, I think, called
Mm.
Brainbox AI, and they do optimization of HVAC systems and energy usage, and they link it in to the grid, and they understand when electricity is cheap, when it's expensive, what the weather's going to be, and all this sort of stuff. So they're doing very cool stuff. And then there's one other company that particularly springs to mind. Well, actually, two other companies particularly spring to mind. There's a company called Unity, who are UNITI, who are based in New York,
Mm.
and they do a system for managing inbound inquiries for brokers. Now, what we've all known for a long time is a large percentage of inquiries come into the office after the office is shut, and so you lose all these things. So their system obviously works 24 hours a day, but it can also go quite a long way through the process, understand what Alex wants, understand whether we've got anything to offer him, set him up with a meeting, and then set up the next stages. So that's a sort of really nice process type of thing, which takes out all the process and the boring bits, which is not a differentiator. The
Mm.
differentiator is when I actually get in front of Alex and I really help him understand what his needs are, how we can help him, and all that. So I can spend more time on really genuinely the value stuff. The last one I want to mention is a Dutch company called AVG, who are a very large Dutch fund. Their real estate division has something like 50 billion euros under management. Now, they have been working for many years on sorting out all their data. So they have very good internal data. So they built what's known as a knowledge graph of all their data, which is a way of understanding what data we have and what are the connections between all these bits of data. So we've got some data in that database, We've got some data in that database. Have they any linkages? And it
Mm.
understands all that. And then from that, they built an AI assistant called Samuel, which becomes part of their investment committee. So they use it. So Samuel obviously knows everything the company knows. It knows all the mandates. It knows all the instructions. It knows blah, blah, blah. So it can become part of the process of aiding them making investment decisions. And I
They can ask it questions almost and say,
they,
right,
they can, yeah, it's almost like having a Socratic mentor. So
yeah,
you,
yeah,
this is what we think about this. What's your opinion? And it'll come
yeah.
back. But have you considered this? And have you considered that? And also, they said to me the difference is if you think we used to take say 5 days to make a decision. 4 of those days would be collating information and getting everything in place, and then one day making the decision. They said essentially now it's flipped. It's one day to get all the information together and 4 days to think about it. And on the premise of do you know that Einstein quote about what would you do about solving a problem if you only had an hour? And he said, "Oh, well, I'd spend 55 minutes thinking about it, and then 5 minutes writing down what the answer was." So
Yeah.
those are a number of companies that are very actively using generative AI in a high value way at the moment.
Excellent. Yeah, that's really interesting. And sort of going back to your earlier point, Anthony, of, it being creative and, the large language models. So it makes sense of documentation and utilizing it to assess masses of, information on those documents. And then, the creative side with the floor plates and the design stuff, which, traditionally has always been a human sort of realm of, well, creativity hasn't, the generative AI is automating some of that process, which is
what I think is really important to grasp with this stuff is, yes, a lot of it is about automation, but automation is low value stuff anyway. It's stuff everyone does. There's no competitive advantage in what you're doing, so just get it out of the way. What it's really good at, I think, is being as a thinking partner. And particularly if one does it as a team and it becomes part of a collective intelligence. So, for instance, I spend a lot of time having quite long conversations with various models, where I'll start off with one premise and we'll go through that, and it'll go off track and I'll put it back off track, and then I'll go off track, and then I'll re-loop round, and then do things like, okay, well, we now think X. Give me some understanding of how I might reframe this opinion. So, for instance, I mean, that is one process that I came across last week, actually, this idea of reframing your opinion. So if you say to one of these models, I believe the real estate industry is very slow to take up with technology. Please advise me how I can reframe that opinion. And it's fascinating because it then will look at, well, why do you think that? And why are they like that? And what might stop people doing that? And I think the ability to push these models much harder than people think is very much underestimated at the moment. They tend to just ask it one or two questions, but really you want to be like a 5-year-old. You know how 5-year-olds are, why, why? And they're enormously good at that. And you also start to get a better appreciation that the human is an important part in this in conversation, because it will, getting to a good endpoint will have a lot to do with the questions you have asked it in the first place, and how you frame them, and your inclination and that sort of thing. And you could get a very dull answer, or you could get a really interesting answer.
Well, definitely. I mean, I think that reminds me of a quote from Picasso, was it? I think he said the problem with computers is they only have the answer.
They can only, yeah, computers are useless. They can only give you answers.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
the annoying thing about that is actually they're quite good at giving you questions now. But
Well, that's it.
I skipped that thing. But they are good at giving you questions, but they are still
They have to be prompted to do that though. So you sort
they
of
do
go,
they
so,
still
so
have to be prompted.
what do you need to know from me to help you
Exactly.
improve your answer, to help us get to where we are? And then you start, and once you start interacting with your chat GPTs or co-pilots in that way, you can really get some great content
Yeah,
and
you absolutely can. I had a long conversation on the train up to town a couple of months ago where I told it to act as if it was Christian Ulbricht, the CEO of JLL.
yeah.
And then I had a long conversation with it about what are the implications for JLL of generative AI and what's going to be the future, what's going to be the future of brokerage. But I'd asked it to act as Christian Ulbricht. Now, Christian Ulbricht is obviously, there's endless of his writings and videos, uh, all manner of stuff on the internet.
Content. Yeah,
So
totally.
so they can adopt the persona, the thinking of Christian Orbit really well. So that then gave you're arguing with someone who knows what they're talking about or debating with someone.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating, whether it gets you to, a definitive right or wrong, but not being hung up about right or wrong is a good thing. That's not the point. The point is you're trying to think your way through this. And I think this is so pertinent within real estate, because if you think in real estate, we've got two mega problems, well, maybe three mega problems. The first is obviously we've got to decarbonize the built environment. That's the mother of all problems. But somehow we've got to do that. Then we've got to work out what is the future of work based on we're clearly moving to more hybrid distributed working all over the place. Yes, there's some kickback, but it's quite interesting. If you look at the 10 most successful companies in the world at the moment, none of them are all in office. They're all hybrid or distributed.
I
In
do,
fact,
I do, I do question some of the motives of the businesses that are bringing, mandate coming back. It's sort of like, oh, we need to get rid of a bit of our workforce rather than
it's
having
a
to
it's
redundant.
it's
We'll just
100% that.
and
Particularly in America, where it's just do you give Anthony a load of money and kick him out, or do you just make
it's
it
come.
make it so unbearable for him that he's going to go in anyway? So yeah, there's all that, but nevertheless, that leaves us with a big issue. And I remember there was a very good report last year by Cushman and Wakefield called something like Obsolescence and Opportunity. And they were talking about the amount of obsolete office space in the US. And they did the same in Europe as well. And it's like 40 odd percent. It's at least 25%, somewhere between 25 and 40%, depending which case. That is a lot of space. What are
Mm.
we going to do with all this stuff? And this is not just an iteration of the thinking of the real estate industry for the last 40 years. So we've got to think a lot more imaginatively, orthogonally, look at things from a different angle. How the hell are we going to do this? And then I suppose the third big thing after that is that therefore changes the nature of a city. What
Mm.
does a city look like when you're not so hung up about central business districts and everyone moving from the residential area to go to the work area? So these are massive issues. It always amazes me when you read these reports about the major trends again in major industries, and real estate isn't even mentioned as a major industry. And you think, well, what's the stat? The people, on average, people spend, I can't remember if it's 90 or 95% of their time inside real estate. So
Yeah.
not necessarily, inside a structure.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really matter what that structure is. The point is that is real estate. So we have these massive, massive challenges. And then you layer on top of all that, what is all this AI going to mean about productivity and inequality and who's going to get jobs, who's going to not get jobs? So we've got to think a lot harder today than I think we've ever had to think. And
Feels
you,
like a feels like a really exciting time now. I mean, those are fundamental shifts in the
yeah,
how humans live, in terms of the city. I mean, how we work, obviously, these are things that have been the same for a long time, maybe with the working, and I suppose cities are, but since the Industrial Revolution or whatever. And so, but they are fundamental shifts that haven't occurred for a long time. And so
I always think about when the real estate industry talks about it's hard to market the real estate industry to young talent. And I
Mm,
always think you're not telling the right story. If this thing about young people want purpose, well, give
yeah,
them the purpose of decarbonizing the built environment and saving the bleeding planet. Give them the purpose of reworking the fabric of every city in the world. You want purpose? Come and work in real estate.
yeah. Well, that's quite a pitch, Anthony,
No, it's a
definitely.
good pitch, isn't it?
I totally agree, though. I mean, and it's really exciting. I think that is incredibly exciting about the impact on what's going to happen, where's it going to go, what's it going to do. Really, really fundamental. And obviously, AI is going to have a big influence in that and how that occurs. So, I mean, you mentioned actually about the jobs and the roles and how that happens. Obviously, there's a lot of talk about the impact of AI on the working world and what impact that will have. What is your opinion on that? Will it take our jobs? Am I going to be
uh,
out of?
it will take your jobs, but not in the way most people think. Most people think it will take your job in the sense it will do your job. It won't do your job. There are very few jobs which are 100% amenable to being taken over by a machine. However, every job, certainly every knowledge worker's job, and this is one of the great ironies. Actually, this is the comeuppance for the middle classes, if you like. We were all very happy when people were moving factories and manufacturing to China because they didn't affect us. We had our nice office jobs. Now everyone's talking, well, now I might move your office job, and suddenly everyone's a lot more interested in it. But the principal problem, I think, is that if you take someone doing the same work as someone else at the moment, the person, the team, the company that reorganizes, if you like, unbundles and rebundles its jobs into what can the human do on their own, what should they be augmented by, what should they automate, and so they restructure the workflows and then lean into every AI-based technology. They are going to be hugely productive. And
Mm,
so the problem is going to come that you're going to need for a fixed amount of work the same a much lower number of people. So to output X, you're probably going to need people minus, I don't know, 20 to 50%. Maybe even more, which means your job gets taken away, not by the machine taking you away, but by the fact that we now can do a lot more. So you need a lot less people to do it. So it's interesting. I giving a talk at the moment called 10 themes for 10 years. And the final thing is we have to build a bigger pie.
mhm.
Because if we don't grow, if we don't get more productive, we are going to have masses of people out of work. Not because the AI is taking all their work, but because Alex and Antony can suddenly do the work of 2, 3 people. And there's people, and this is what I tell people on my course at the moment. Forget what your company is doing. Just think of this personally at the moment. If you want to protect your own future, just think how productive can you as an individual get? And you can get really, really productive as an individual. Take whatever your job is, break it down into individual tasks, see where you can apply AI. You will definitely be 10, 20, 30, you might be multiple times more productive than someone else. So you become more employable. So, that's not the solution, just doing it at an individual level, but at an individual level, that's certainly the way you should approach So
That's
if you
what that's
build a bigger pie, then we have got a problem.
well, that's very interesting and great for people individually to take action, which I think is a great bit of advice. And I think there's other pressures as well. It's been very hard to find people that fit roles. There's a talent crunch on the horizon. There's a lot of an aging population, people going into retirement. We might need to be more productive per head. Well, we do anyway, but there's that. So AI might just be the perfect tool to help us, you know,
Survive demographics.
Yes, exactly, exactly. And there's an
It's
aging
true.
population, and the birth rates are dropping, aren't they? We're
Yeah.
now so we need the those people of a working age to be highly productive, and so AI could be a godsend in that respect. But
But the only thing with that is that it's absolutely true, and it's nowhere more true than in China. The robots are going to arrive just in time for China because it is aging so quickly. Mind you, so is Germany. Germany is aging at an incredible. But that is a defensive. That is a defensive way of looking at it. I
Mhm.
think we have to adopt this. Um, Not necessarily the real Silicon Valley tech bro thing of abundance. We're just going to have more than and anything. But we have to think, how does this enable us to do lots of the things we've never been able to do before? And I
Mhm.
keep thinking, you go back to the UN's sustainability goals. What are there? 17 of them or something like that. And I always think, well, once we've solved all of them, let's worry about not having anything to do.
Yeah.
There's a lot of problems. There's a lot of problems in the world. There's lots of things we absolutely need to do. And I think we need to approach AI as hopefully an enabler, if not the enabler, of us to do a lot of things that simply weren't possible uh, before.
I
Um,
I agree with you, Anthony. I think that is the key thing, and it's at the moment it's interesting. We're utilizing AI to do what we traditionally do. It's like, I'll do my admin for me or whatever. This is how I do it for me. It's the things that we haven't thought about, almost like what can AI do that we've never done before that will enable us to do extra stuff that we're not thinking about normally. It's not just helping me write an email or a presentation or whatever it might be doing from a generative point of view, but what's the extra stuff that I have not been capable of doing myself? That
well, it's quite interesting actually. I think well, a couple of thoughts of this. One is my friend Draw Poleg's always going on about the matching capabilities of a future world. So that Alex needs to do X. How does he find the person to do it? And the potential for these systems to enable us to find this person, and they're in the middle of Timbuktu, but they're perfectly qualified and they can do it now, as opposed to the old world where we all moved to big cities because big cities are glom. So you had a better chance of finding someone like that. So the matching thing is very, very important. But I also think there's going to be a need if you take your industry, which is
Mm,
getting a bit of a bad name for the way it uses AI. So you've
mhm.
now got a situation of people complaining that applicants are using AI to generate their applications, and their say is, yes, that's because you deal with me with an AI and you don't deal with me as a person. So what the hell? I'm going to make 1,000 applications. And I have no particular interest in you because you've got no particular interest in me because you're just fobbing me off with an algorithmic process. So I'm going to fight back. And that makes me think that's one of the examples where we're misusing we're misusing what AI can help us to do. When we offload what should have a large human qualitative component just
Mm.
to the machines, we're going to end up with lots of problems. I was reading something this morning about the UK's algorithm for deciding who gets a liver transplant. So when a liver becomes available, there's an algorithm that decides this person should get it. And supposedly it's completely flawed. And if you're under 45, you have no hope of ever getting a liver because it has a huge inbuilt bias against. And, and this happens in these sorts of systems. So we need to find a way. We've almost, that Cory Doctorow phrase of enshittification. We've sort of done this we're doing this in recruitment because we've already got to this. Well, you treat me like that, so I'll treat you like that. And then everyone's suddenly going to get 100 times the amount of work that they had before, and it's going to be harder to find it. We've screwed it up because we've thrown AI to solve a problem without thinking, couldn't we have used AI to help us make that problem not necessarily go away, but less of a problem and more of a feature? And I think there's lots of circumstances like that. There was a very interesting meta study that came out of MIT 3 weeks ago, and they'd done a meta-analysis of 116 research documents on the impact of AI on work. And they were talking about most situations, if you add AI to a human, actually can often decrease the capability. That either the human should do it or the AI should do it. Put the two together, they actually counter each other out. And normally it's because the human and the AI think they're better at the same thing.
Right.
And the human typically would override the AI because the AI would generally be right, but the human, no, you're just a computer. You don't understand the ramifications, and the results would get less. But they talked about a thing called AI synergy, and when you get synergy is when you find the workflows where getting a human to work with a machine works to each of their best strengths, and they don't fight each other. The machine does what it's really good at, and the human does what it's really good at. So just as one example, something like fraud detection. Fraud detection, machines can do most of it, but there's edge cases. So the edge case comes up, and then you need a human to do it. Or going back to what we were talking about, design. The AI can give you 500 different designs, all of which match your criteria.
Yeah.
The real skill, as I say, is the human going, that's the one, adding your judgment to so then you can get real synergy. So the AI can give you more options, but you being in the loop actually end up with something 2 + 2 = 5. And this doesn't work in all circumstances, but there's 4 particular categories which I can't remember off the top of my head where they do. But there's lots of this process that we're going to go through as an industry, and every industry is going to do it. We're going to look at everything we do and rework.
Yeah, again, fascinating. And I just something sprung to mind with your earlier comment about the matchmaking and it being outside of cities and everything else. So, and then we were talking about the problems within the work. So the nature of the cities, the future of work, those are obviously quite clearly aligned as well, so it's going to be really interesting. And then where the residential districts are and that sort of stuff is very interesting.
I'm actually a huge fan of mixed use, and I think funnily enough we need to go back to sort of the 15th 16th century Florence type thing of city states where you lived, you worked, you played all in the same area. Because if you think we developed cities to deal with yesterday's technology, because so we could move people from there to there, we did, and we've separated. Well, that's where the offices are, that's where the homes are, and that's where the play is. And you sort of think it's actually a bit of a nonsense.
Yeah,
we really need to be together. And one of the big opportunities within real estate, I think, is I wrote a blog post a couple of weeks ago called Real Estate as Maven. And the idea is, how do we create offices which the form factor and the operation of that office is the catalyst for connections, is the catalyst for growing knowledge and connecting people. So we've got to get the right people in our building. We've got to understand what Alex knows and what Antony wants to know, and find ways of plugging them together. So Antony and Alex will come to the office because I'm 100% guaranteed I'm going to meet someone, or I'm going to learn something that I would not have learned other than being there. Now, that's obviously that's not going to be 5 days a week.
No.
But you know what it's like when you go to a good conference, not just one of the ones where you've got endless marketing people giving you their 10 minutes on why our product's so great. But the ones where you suddenly, oh my God, this room's got 40 of the people that I normally Zoom with, and they're all in the same time. They're incredibly powerful. They're incredibly powerful, but it's a curation thing, isn't it? Yeah. It's like you building a team for a company. It's not just the Alex or the Antony that matters. It's how do they work together?
Exactly.
And it's this curation. And to what extent is real estate part? Is that a job for real estate? And I sort of think it is.
I agree. I think it is.
Everything's becoming more operational. So the people that are using the space and curating their own space have to have really good relationship with the person running the physical space. So if they need to do X, they can do it quickly. And
and the blurring of the line between where you work and working from home and being in the office, but the value of that. But then also you want to meet socially as well. There's obviously the work side of things where you want to share ideas from a business point of view, but then obviously you want to do that when you're socializing and meeting friends and that sort of stuff. So these are the same things happening. It's the meeting of people, the meeting of ideas, and and this feels like there's a real opportunity there. Right, we're talking about the nature of cities and everything else like that. How these things plug in together and how they work. Are they
but it's not random, is it, Alex?
No,
the thing is, this can be
a little bit of randomness in there.
You can have it. It's in relative terms, but it's not completely. What's it, intelligent serendipity type thing? Just sort of stick those together and see what happens.
Definitely. Well, that's another point I'd really like to get your thoughts on, actually, is around sort of the ethical and practical considerations of AI, because obviously that comes up, and I wonder what your thoughts are about that. What considerations are there?
It's clearly a very important area. My instinct is that actually, I'm just thinking Boeing last week. I don't know if you heard about the situation with Boeing last week, which, the worst managed company in the last couple of decades. They've screwed up everything, haven't they? But they suddenly decided to introduce a lot of workplace monitoring sensors into their buildings. And of course, Boeing being Boeing, they never bothered to actually tell anyone about it. And then they did it, and all the employees went absolutely ballistic, and they ripped it out within 48 hours. And they spent over $1 million on sensors and stuff because they hadn't talked to anyone.
External communication, wasn't it?
Yeah, and but it's worse than no communication. It's not treating people like adults, and it's this whole them and us thing. And I don't think put it around the other way. A lot of the things I talk about require knowing a lot about people. So lots of the stuff I talk about how you can make workplaces better, in the sense of, I want a workplace that Antony can go in there, and this building is going to know what Antony needs to do during the day, and it's going to provide him with the perfect place for that. So it knows he needs this lighting, he needs this temperature, he needs this much space, he needs this technology, and that will put him in the perfect environmental conditions to be as good as he's capable of being. I can't make him better than he is, but I can enable him to work at his as maximum. Now, obviously, to know that, for the building to do that, it needs to know an awful lot about me. Now, it can know an awful lot about me by spying on me surreptitiously, or it can know an awful lot about me by helping me understand that it needs this information for this purpose. That I am asking you this, this, and this, and this, and the trade is that will mean I can give you A, B, C, D, E. And it has to be very explicit that I need that information to do that, as opposed to what's happened, certainly happened in social media today. Just blanket bomb, just steal every bit of information. Don't ask us. Just take it all. We don't care. We have no use for it. We don't know what we're going to use it for. Just steal it all. And it's got the big backlash against that. So, this is always already to an extent happened with things like facial recognition going into buildings. That tends to go down like a lead balloon, mostly because the people don't trust the people doing it.
Yeah, the people owning where the data is going. Yeah.
But if they knew we're going to use facial recognition, this data will be removed, it will be stored in this way under these conditions, will be not sold to anyone else, and these are the only people who have access to it, and this is all we guarantee that we're going to do with it, then fine, I can just, in China, China's the sort of opposite of this. But you can just go into China and buy stuff with your face.
Yeah.
You don't want it the way they're doing. But there has to be a way to enable the best services to gain the information they need to create the best services in a way that is unbiased, which is ethical, which is responsible, and that sort of thing. And I think we are definitely going to see some
make that happen. Do we need legislation around AI and its usage to ensure that there aren't nefarious people taking advantage?
The trouble with legislation in AI in advance is that you don't know what's going to happen, and this is part of the problem with the EU AI Act. That I can't remember if it actually ended up in the final version, but there was a version where they were going to prohibit any model over a certain size.
Right. Yeah.
And they made it a size that seemed like ridiculous.
Yeah.
But we're already way past it.
Yeah.
Already way past it. What I think is more required is a set of principles of ethical behavior, and we're going to let you do it, but if you're a naughty boy, we're going to come and slap you really hard. If you abuse this, we're going to come and slap you really hard, because I can't guess what you're going to do with it. It's how could you make, if you think let's ban something to do with GPS for some sort of personal reasons. I don't want to be able to follow you around. Well, then you couldn't have had Uber.
Yeah,
because Uber has to know where. You don't know in advance what is going to happen. But I do think there are certain principles that can't be that hard to clarify. Like it's like the deep fake stuff, the malicious deep fake stuff. I don't understand why that is not an absolute no, and if you do that, you're going to jail.
Yeah, exactly. Those are the sort of kind of restrictions that need to be in place to. Yeah. And it's like that, like you say, because you can't say specifically because we don't. The advancements are so quick. It's impossible.
But we also need personally, and this is something. If people ask me, what should I teach my children? is one of the things we all need to get a lot better at, and are going to need to get a lot better at, is actually critical thinking, because we're moving to not necessarily a fake world, but a world where we cannot guarantee authenticity. And we're going to just have to build natural muscle memory, brain memory. But if we see something, we don't immediately go, "Oh my God, look, so and so has, David Beckham has, done something," and you get obviously,
it's fake.
and we're not very good at that. You just look at the number of things that people get taken in by, the memes that people get taken in by, and we are going to need to become. I always say, actually, we need to become better humans. We need, because humans obviously have an extraordinary capabilities, much of which we're too lazy to exercise very much. But I think we're going to need to exercise. I mean, not least of all, because you are genuinely going to need to exercise your human capabilities to prosper alongside.
It's going to be a differentiator, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, because they're a computer, for instance, cannot have empathy, but it can fake empathy.
Yeah.
And there's that old Tony Blair joke, isn't it? Well, once you can fake sincerity, you've got it made. But they can fake it's not. Actually, again, over the weekend, I had a long conversation about consciousness with machines, and there was something about they were testing the new OpenAI model with no constraints, and it went off and it did this, and they were trying to shut it down, and they were making it known that they were trying to shut it down, and it took defensive measures. it tried to replicate itself on another server and things like that, because they've given it access to everything. But I then had a conversation with GPT and said, I don't understand this, because this implies a degree of consciousness, doesn't it? That it's going, you're trying to shut me down, therefore I'm going to do that. And it was a really interesting conversation, because the GPT came back and said, it looks like that, but that's not what's happening. This is actually still statistics and prediction and based on training data. It's an algorithmic response to a situation. It's not a consciousness thing. It's just that's the sort of behavior one would expect if one was being attacked in a certain way. So again, it's not we look at it and think, my God, how can it know that? It's alive. No, but that's the behavior you would have learned because that's what most people do. There's an interesting one, that a chap called Benedict Evans, who's a brilliant writer on all things technology, says, and he always says, if I ask GPT to do give me the biography of Benedict Evans, because there's loads of, I've been writing them publicly for years and years, and there's lots of my stuff, and it comes back and it's very, very good in describing what someone like Benedict Evans would have been. So, for instance, it comes back and it says, I think he went to Cambridge and then he worked for McKinsey's and then he did that. And he said, I did neither of those things, but someone like me, it's reasonable to think, well, it might well have gone to Cambridge, and it's actually reasonably likely to have gone to. So that's what it's doing when it's answering. What is the expected response to this question, which is interesting.
Definitely, and you can ask it, give me a skyline of London, and it will pull out all the landmarks, but they're not. It's not a skyline of London. It just is a potential type of thing. Yeah. But one final question, Anthony, just really as a sort of maybe takeaway for people watching who are maybe thinking about implementing AI into their processes. You talked about that, and over the last hour. What advice would you give someone looking to sort of try and implement and maximize their productivity utilizing AI? Any sort of takeaway?
Okay. Yes. Yeah, it's actually something, again, that we cover in my course quite a lot. At an individual level, I say to people, use GPT or Claude to help you break down your job into tasks and subtasks. So ask it to act as I don't know, a workplace designer or a valuation surveyor or a portfolio. Tell them in quite strong detail what your job is, and ask them to come up with the tasks and then subtasks for that role. And what you then find is once you get down to the subtasks, is it then becomes quite easy to understand where you might be able to apply generative AI.
We ask the GPT to tell you which ones it'll do best.
Well, yes, exactly. You could just do that. Get to the subtask and then ask it to do. At some point, it's worthwhile going in and saying, well, the reality of doing that is so and so. But that is 100% worthwhile doing.
That's a great bit of advice
on your individual thing, because where you might be able to help yourself, but you also know what your attack vectors are likely to be. Where is a PropTech company going to go? You see, they do those. We can automate that.
We can do all of that. Don't need you
so
anymore.
that's a really good thing to at a company level. The best thing to do as a start. So you think of all the stuff we do at the top of the funnel, if you like. First of all, do what is high value and what is low value. So do this task thing, but across. It doesn't necessarily need to be tasks. It could be like on workflows. Stuff we do. What's got the highest value? What's got the lowest value? And then look at what's amenable to AI and what's not amenable to AI. So that's just a case of sort of knowing what it's good at and knowing what it's not so good at, and which ones fit in very, very well. Then look at how failure friendly something is. So failure friendly means if I'm writing a blog post and I want a title, that's 100% failure friendly, because there's no right answer. It could be any of 10. If I'm doing a chatbot and I'm giving someone our opening hours, that is failure unfriendly. So that has to be looked at. And then you get that, and so the funnel's going down like that, and then you start adding things like what is financially viable to do. So there might be things that are very high value and you can do, but you only do them once a year. And it might cost you 20 grand to do it, but it's only once a year you do it, as opposed to something slightly less value, but you do it 3 times a week. In which case, and then you look at scalability.
That's that time and cost.
So there's quite a strong process. Well, there's a very strong process at the individual level, and at a corporate situation, there's quite a relatively easy process to sit down and work through. At a corporate level, I'd get a mixed group of people together, right from CEO down to a coalface person, and then spend a few hours and do this process. And just that will get you a long way. And then, as you say, if you need to know how to do it, you give GPT a really, really detailed description of what you try and do, and then say, well, how do I do that?
Perfect. Well, that sounds really good. And just out of interest, Anthony, I mean, people are interested in your courses. Where do they find them? Is that on your website?
It's just directly off my website, which is antonyslumbers.com. And there's a button there for course. And then cohort 8, we start in January the 17th. And it's a 3-week course for practitioners. It's not a technical course. We don't do anything about algorithms. It's pretty much what we've been talking about here. How can you use it? What can it do? What are your use cases within real estate? And how is it going to change the nature of demand for real estate? Concentrated in 3 weeks, and then a really good network of people building up who've been through it. So
Amazing. Excellent. Well, look, that sounds great. And Anthony, thank you so much for joining me today. It's really a great conversation and obviously very topical. So great to get your input. So thank you so much for
Pleasure.
taking.
It's a pleasure. It's been very interesting. Thank you.